Hey you guys, Miss Cummings here. Okay, so I hope that you guys can see this anchor chart. I'm going to show you this and then I'll share my screen to the document camera so that you can see the one that you have printed. You should be able to see one right now on Schoology for you to print off or just copy in your notebook. So today we're going to be talking about our third of the 6 reading strategies, making predictions. You guys have probably all made predictions while you were reading, either before reading or during reading or after reading. So on here it says making predictions. A prediction is a guess you make using text or picture clues about what will happen next. So this is something that I like to do. I like to say a prediction is a good guess. A prediction is what happens next. Predictions can be right, predictions can be wrong, but either way is okay. Okay, so predictions are your good guesses about what you think will happen next. So when we're making predictions, we say, I think blank because blank. So I think that it is going to rain outside because I heard someone say they were grabbing their raincoat. So that might be a prediction that you made about what you think will happen next. Or I think it's going to rain because I heard thunder. That kind of goes into inferencing, and we'll get into that later. But while you're reading, you can make predictions or good guesses about what you think is going to happen next from clues in the text. So you might make predictions before reading by just looking at the title or the illustrations of a book, and it might give you some ideas of maybe what that story is going to be about. You may make predictions during reading of what you think is going to happen next because of something you read or something you saw in the illustration. And then after reading, you can confirm or adjust your predictions. So like I said earlier, predictions can be right, predictions can be wrong. Either way is okay. You can either confirm or adjust your predictions as you read through. So today, I'm going to share my screen real quick on here so you can see what we're going to be doing in our notebook. Okay, so on here, let me take this off the stand. Today you are going to need your reading notebook, a glue stick, your making prediction sheet like this, something to write with. So I'm going to write on here in my notebook, making predictions. I'm going to write 3 predictions. That is our third reading strategy of a great reader, is making predictions while you read. I'm going to get some glue and I'm going to glue down this anchor chart of making predictions. It's the one that's behind me that I just went over. This is your copy. I'm going to glue that into my notebook. Once that's glued in, I'm just going to flip the page to the next open page, which is this page. And I'm going to write at the top, the English roses. The English roses. Oh, you also need sticky notes. Sorry. Okay, so under the English roses, I'm going to do 2 sticky notes like I did before with the questioning so that I can have 3 different sections. I'm just going to draw my lines like this. And again, I'm going to write before, during, and after. So while I'm reading, I'm going to make a prediction about what this story is going to be about, the English roses, before I read, and I'm going to write it in this section. Then while I'm reading, I'm going to pause, and you're going to make a prediction of what you think will happen next that will go in during reading. And then after, we are going to either confirm that our predictions were correct, or we'll need to adjust them and say why we weren't correct and what actually happened. And we'll write that in the after. So here's the book. If you need to pause this video at any time to finish writing notes, please do that. So here's the story that I'm going to read. It's called The English Roses. It's another story by Madonna. If you don't know who she is, you should look her up or ask your parents. So this is a story by Madonna. It's called The English Roses. So right now, I want you to make a prediction of what you think this story is going to be about just from looking at the cover, this illustration and the cover art. And you're going to write that in your before reading prediction on your sticky note. So if you need to pause right now, pause so that you can write in your before reading prediction. Okay, The English Roses. Oh, this is just an illustration. I'll show you guys this. The pictures in this book are really, really pretty. Have you ever heard of the English roses? Here's what they are not. A box of chocolates, a football team, flowers growing in the garden. Here's what they are. 4 little girls named Nicole, Amy, Charlotte, and Grace. So there they are. There's the English roses right there. Here are some things you should know about them. They go to the same school and live in the same neighborhood. They play the same games, read the same books, and like the same boys. They have picnics in the summer and ice skating parties in the winter. They are practically glued to each other at the hip. So if you made a prediction already that this story was about girls that were friends, maybe you're on the right track. It's interesting though, on the cover, you've got 4 girls right here, and then you've got 1 girl by herself over here. And we just read that the English roses were these 4 girls here, so I'm wondering who this is over here.
Mr. Allen, if you're in the building, please come to the front office. Mr. Allen, you have a visitor. If you're in the building, you have a visitor.
So here are the English roses dancing. Seems like something they like to do. It all sounds so perfectly fun and nice, and in many ways it was. But there was only one problem. They were all a little bit jealous of another girl in the neighborhood. Her name was Bina, and here are some things you should know about her. She was very, very beautiful. She had long, silky hair and skin like milk and honey. She was an excellent student and very good at sports. She was always kind to people. She was special. But she was sad because even though she was the most beautiful girl anyone had ever seen, she was also very lonely. She had no friends, and everywhere she went, she was alone. Okay, so now we know who that is. The girl on the front who's by herself, her name is Bina. By now you're probably wondering, what's the big deal? If she was so nice, why didn't the English roses invite her over for a cup of tea? Listen, I already told you why, because they were a little jealous. Well, maybe more than a little. Have you ever been green with envy or felt like you were about to explode if you didn't get what someone else had? If you say no, you're telling a big fat fib, and I'm going to tell your mother. Now stop interrupting me. This book is so funny. So, the English roses are green with envy. That means they're very envious, which means they want what Bina has, whether it's her good looks or who knows what else they want from her. They already just said that Bina didn't have any friends, so it's kind of sad. You see, the English roses wanted to be friendly, and they knew that Bina was lonely, but they could not bring themselves to be nice to her, because everywhere they went, this is what they heard. What a beauty she is! She shines like a star. That Bina is something else. When Nicole and Amy and Charlotte and Grace heard people speak this way about Bina, they always felt like they were going to be sick. This is what they would say. How could anyone be so perfect? No one has ever said that about us. It's not fair to have so much. Let's pretend we don't see her when she walks by. Let's push her into the lake. And that's what they did. No, not the push her into the lake part, just the pretending not to see her. And so when time went on and the English roses continued to have fun with each other, while Bina remained alone. Is that nice? I know you guys can't answer me back, but that is so not friendly and not kind. Oh, I didn't show you the picture. So here's the English roses on this side. And then here's Lonely Bina on this side. One night when all the girls were having a sleepover party at Nicole's house, her mother peeked her head around the corner and said, "Do you mind if I come in and have a chat with all of you?" Now you guys know that if you're at a sleepover with all your girlfriends or you're at a guy's sleepover and someone's mom comes in and asks to have a chat with you, probably not a good thing. "Don't worry, Mom, we're going to bed soon," said Nicole. "Just let us finish our pillow fight." "That's not why I came in here," her mother replied. "I want to talk to you about Bina. She lives down the street. She goes to your school. She likes to do all the same things you guys like to do. And yet you never invite her over or make any effort to be friendly with her." There was a very long pause. Hey, everyone. Mia, will you shut that door, please? That was Miss Vida's daughter. The English roses looked around the room at one another. Amy was the first to speak. "She thinks she's God's gift to creation just because she's beautiful." "Yes, why should we invite her over? She gets enough attention already," Charlotte joined in. "It's not that we don't like her," said Nicole. "It's just that she's probably stuck up. Pretty girls usually are." Nicole's mother thought about this for a moment, and then she said, "I think you girls are being unfair. She looks like she could really use a friend, and you haven't even had a conversation with her. How do you know what kind of person she is? How would you like it if people decided whether they were going to be nice to you based on how you look?" So there's all the English roses. The girls knew she had a point, but they didn't want to say it. Suddenly, they didn't feel like having a pillow fight. "Please think about what I've said," said Nicole's mother, and she stood up and kissed them all goodnight. When her mother was gone, Nicole turned out the light and the girls lay awake in the dark for quite a while, thinking about what Nicole's mother had said. No one said a word, and eventually they all fell fast asleep. And while they were sleeping, they each had the same dream. Okay, this is where we're going to pause, and you are going to write your during prediction. So that's going to be, right in the middle here, this during prediction. What do you think is going to happen next? What do you predict is going to happen next? They just got a talking to from Nicole's mom, and now they're all going to sleep. They're all laying in silence, so you know they probably feel bad. And then they all fell asleep, and they all have the same dream. I wonder what their dream is going to be about. So on your prediction, use one of your, use that sentence starter, like I predict blank because, you see it right here, or I think blank is going to happen next because, and then tell me why you think that. So if you are still writing, press pause, and then press play when you're ready after you've written your prediction. Here is what they dreamed. All four of them were having a picnic in the park, complaining, as usual, about how beautiful Bina was, how she got too much attention, and how unfair it was for them, when suddenly a fairy godmother appeared. She was short and plump and very jolly looking. Listen, why am I telling you this? Don't you know what a good fairy godmother looks like? Anyway, she landed right on top of Charlotte's sandwich. "Oh, excuse me. Is that pumpernickel bread?" she said, sniffing the air. "I just love the smell of pumpernickel." So here's the fairy godmother crashing in on their group picnic. The girls sat and stared at her with their mouths open because they had never seen a fairy godmother before. Said the fairy godmother, clearing her throat. Now, where was I? Oh, yes, I couldn't help but overhear your conversation, and it sounds like you are all quite dissatisfied with who you are, which makes me very unhappy, and I would like to offer you the opportunity to become someone else. What do you mean? Asked Charlotte, pulling her sandwich out from underneath the fairy godmother's bottom. What I mean, replied the fairy, and please do not interrupt me, is that if you are so jealous of Bina, then by all means you should be someone else. In fact, perhaps one of you would even like to trade places with Bina. Oh, that's silly. How could we possibly just become someone else? Interrupted Grace. So here they all are at the picnic. Well, if you would just let me finish, humped the fairy. When I sprinkle my magic dust over you, you can be whoever you'd like to be. But first, you might want to fly over to Bina's house with me and spend some time with her just to make sure that her life is to your liking. Or anyone else's for that matter. The girls all gulped and nodded, and finally Nicole said, But she'll see us looking through the window and she'll think we're all burglars or something. Yes, she might call the police, added Amy. Oh, nonsense, scoffed the fairy, nibbling on Charlotte's chocolate chip cookie. When I sprinkle you with magic fairy dust, you will be invisible, and you can go wherever you want to go, and no one will ever see you. The girls just sat there speechless, which didn't happen very often, I can assure you. Well, don't you just sit there stuffing your faces, tutted the fairy, stuffing her face. My time is very valuable. The girls leaned forward and whispered quietly for a moment. They decided that even though the fairy took their cookies without asking, she seemed rather harmless. And anyway, they couldn't turn down the chance to spy on Bina without her knowing they were there. So they asked to be sprinkled with fairy dust, and off they flew to Bina's house. I would pause right here so you can write a second during prediction. And I want you to predict what they're going to see or find out at Bina's house, maybe what it's like, kind of in her life. They're all so jealous of Bina that this fairy godmother is saying, hey, why don't you just become Bina? And so they're like, okay, we're going to go spy and see her life and how it is. So I want you to make a prediction of what you think they might find when they go to her house. So press play after you're done writing that prediction. Suddenly, they found themselves sitting around Bina's kitchen table. And there, on her hands and knees, was Bina, scrubbing the floor. Sweat was dripping from her forehead, and she looked very tired. All at once, her father came into the room and said, It's getting late, Bina. When you finish scrubbing the floor, I think you should start cooking dinner. I'm going outside to fix the car. Bina smiled and said, Okay, Papa. Then he was gone. I want you to think now, was that something you thought you would see at Bina's house? Something that you predicted that she'd be doing on her hands and knees scrubbing the floor? Bina proceeded to do a multitude of tasks. When she finished cleaning the floor, she peeled potatoes, she chopped onions, she set the table, she scaled the fish, she washed and ironed clothes, and finally, she emptied the trash. The English Roses couldn't believe their eyes. They had never seen a girl work so hard in their lives. She reminds me of Cinderella, said Amy. She looks like she hasn't combed her hair in a week, remarked Charlotte. Where is her mother? Asked Nicole. She doesn't have a mother, replied the fairy godmother. She lives alone with her father, and he works all day. So when she comes home from school, she has to clean the house and wash the clothes and cook the dinner. So there's Bina doing all of these chores around the house. I think the English roses are surprised that that's her life. You mean she does it all by herself? Asked Grace. Yes, you ninnies, answered the fairy. I just said she lives alone with her father. Well, what happened to her mother? Asked Nicole. She died a very long time ago. Poor thing, sighed the fairy. And as you know, Bina has no friends, so she spends all her time on her own. Well, come along then, girls. Would you like to see what her bedroom looks like? The English roses all stood up to go, but they felt bad about leaving Bina behind all by herself with so much work. Oh, don't dawdle, ladies. I've got places to go and people to meet, said the fairy impatiently. So off they went to see if Bina's room was to their liking. They were not prepared with what they saw. A simple room with a single bed, a chest of drawers, a shelf full of books. There was, of course, one doll, but only one? Can you believe it? Well, you better, because I'm telling you. There was one picture in a frame on the bedside table, and all the girls gathered around it to see who was in the picture. It was a beautiful photograph of Bina's mother. Nicole's eyes began to fill with tears. I feel so bad, she said. It must be awful to not have a mother. She must feel terribly lonely, said Charlotte. And we haven't been very nice to her. Well, what do you say? Interrupted the fairy godmother. Anyone want to trade places? There was a very long pause. So there's Bina's room. The English roses looked at one another. It was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. I think we've made a terrible mistake, said Grace. I can't imagine living without my mom. I don't want to do so many chores, said Amy, and I don't know the first thing about cooking. Well, is there anyone else you'd like to be? Asked the fairy godmother. Perhaps in another neighborhood, another city, or even another country. I'm sure I could arrange it for you. Please, just let us go home to our own cozy beds and our families who we love, begged Nicole. Yes, we want to go home, cried the rest of the girls. Suit yourself, said the fairy. But in the future, you might think twice before grumbling that someone else has a better life than you. As I said before, I'm a very busy woman. In the blink of an eye, the English roses were back in bed, fast asleep. So that was them standing in Bina's room. None of them wanted to switch lives with Bina. When morning came, the girls awoke, relieved to find that they were still themselves. They told one another about their dream, and they promised each other that from that day on, they would be kinder to Bina and stop complaining about their own lives. First, they invited Bina to a tea party, and they started walking to school with her. And not long after that, they were doing homework together. Bina even taught them how to bake an apple pie. They soon found out that she was very likable indeed. They grew to love her like a sister and often went to her house to help with her chores. So look, they're all together, tea party, and then there they all are helping Bina with her chores. They're making an apple pie. Time went by, and soon everywhere the English roses went, Bina went with them. And you're not going to believe this, but people in the neighborhood started talking about them. And this is what they said. Those English roses are really special. What beautiful girls. They'll grow up to be incredible women one day. So there they all are. They've included Bina into their group. She's now one of the English roses. And did you know what? They did. And if you don't believe me, then go and find out for yourself. I didn't make this up. All right. That's it. The English roses. Okay, so you made lots of predictions during that story. Now you're going to go into your after section right here. And you're going to write whether your predictions were correct or not. So if your predictions were correct, you're going to write, you know, my prediction of blank was correct. This happened. Not all of your predictions are probably right. There's probably a couple of things that happened differently in the text than what you thought was going to happen. So I want you to write how the story actually happened and how it was a little different than what you thought was going to happen in the story, what you had originally predicted. All right, and then that's it for predicting today. So until I see you guys next time for our next reading strategy, I'll talk to you guys later.